Travelers around the world are wondering when Malaysia will open its borders to international tourists again. In this video, I want to talk about the current travel situation in Malaysia and what you can expect going forward. Taking a look at what happened so far since the beginning of the pandemic, Malaysia has really been conservative when it comes to letting foreigners enter the country. In fact, only citizens, residents, and long-term pass holders were allowed to enter the country since the beginning of the pandemic. Even people such as Malaysian my second homeowners were not allowed to enter during certain phases of the current pandemic that we're in. Something that nobody would have expected, but since the country has taken such a conservative approach towards not letting foreigners in, to keep COVID cases, to keep hospitalization and death rates low, a lot of people are still not able to enter Malaysia despite of having property in the country, despite of having ties to the country. And naturally, these people are a little bit anxious right now because they just don't know when it will happen, when Malaysia will finally relax its border policies, its border restrictions. If we take a look at how things have changed now because of Omicron, Omicron is a new COVID variant, and the World Health Organization has labeled Omicron as a variant of concern. Omicron has turned out to be much milder than previous COVID variants, yet countries like Malaysia, the Philippines have decided to shut borders again to tighten restrictions, especially for those people arriving from high-risk countries where Omicron cases have been detected. Malaysia and the Philippines are just two of these countries. Also, Indonesia has not really relaxed its entry requirements since this summer. One of the things that you can do if you're really not in the mood to wait any longer before you can step ground on Malaysian soil, you can travel to the island of Langkawi. I know this is the only option right now, but Langkawi is a tourist destination for not only Westerners but also Asians. Malaysians, they love going to the island of Langkawi because it is just a great experience, very comparable to Phuket, Thailand. And the sandbox program implemented by the Malaysian government is very similar to what Thailand has done with the island of Phuket. So only vaccinated tourists that have a negative PCR test and are willing to test on arrival in Langkawi are allowed to travel to the island. I know this is not super fantastic news. This is not like, okay, the whole country is open, you can now travel to Malaysia if you're fully vaccinated. It's nothing like that, but it is a step towards opening up the country. It is the same step that Thailand has taken already more than half a year ago, and right now people can travel to Bangkok, Chiang Mai, Pattaya, all these tourist destinations across Thailand, being fully vaccinated. Even unvaccinated travelers are welcome, but they need a quarantine upon arrival in Thailand. Will we see the same continuation in Malaysia? While tourism is not Malaysia's main source of income, it's not a significant part of the gross domestic product. It's not an insignificant part either, but it still is not as important as it is to a country like Thailand. Yet I do believe that the Malaysian government has intentions of reopening borders sooner rather than later, simply because they want to maintain this legacy brand image, you'd think. However, actions in recent days prove otherwise, show otherwise. If we take a look at what other countries have done, for instance, Thailand has said, we're gonna live with the virus. Cambodia has said exactly the same. Malaysia has said the same, but we will see if what they said will actually be implemented next month, because Malaysia said that in January of 2022, the country will reopen its borders to international tourists. So not just the island of Langkawi, but the whole country, assuming you're fully vaccinated, of course. But should the government decide not to move ahead with this plan that so many of you guys are waiting for to be implemented, I think the country will lose credibility because people make travel plans, they book hotels, they book flights, they make all these arrangements. So naturally, nobody wants to see a no right before the reopening date, something that we have seen the Philippines do, unfortunately. I can't tell you how this will work out, but now that Malaysia and Singapore have opened up vaccinated travel lanes, I think it is a step towards regulating the travel sector in a way that vaccinated people can come in if they also test negative upon arrival, and potentially the test upon arrival will be removed as well. When this will happen is yet to be determined. One thing is certain though, if you're somebody who wants to invest in Malaysia, whether you want to go with the Malaysia My Second Home program, whether you want to start a company in Malaysia, you want to apply for the tech entrepreneur program, you want to get a new entrepreneur, established entrepreneur visa, Malaysia has really good visa programs, but the problem is that the decisions made on the top level have been shaky at best, and that really restrains investors from moving to Malaysia, from investing into Malaysia, because people want to have certainty. People don't want to feel like, well, the government can change its mind from one day to another, leaving you clueless about what's going to happen. Nobody wants to deal with this. People want certainty. There's no doubt that the pandemic has caused not only uncertainty in Malaysia, but across the globe. And some countries have decided, for whatever reason, to take a tougher stance towards managing it. They've been more conservative, they've enforced more restrictions, they have restrained foreign investment from flowing into the country. While this is not good for the long term, governments thought that it would prevent the virus from spreading further. It's up to each and every government to decide how they want to manage it, of course. But what I personally believe is that for Malaysia to thrive again, for Malaysia to join the top of digital nomad countries, the top of investor countries, if Malaysia wants to get to the top again, because right now, no matter what anybody may believe, Malaysia is not at the top right now. But to get back to the top, I think the country needs to show more consistency. The country needs to show more certainty. What you say is what you're going to do. And this is a universal principle that doesn't just apply to visa programs and residence permits and citizenship programs and traveling and digital nomads. No, it applies to pretty much everything and everybody. If you want to have a good time in Malaysia again, then the question is, should you go to the country right now? Because what we have seen happening to the Malaysia My Second Home program was everything but pleasant. People who have been part of this program for many years, some people have even gone as far as started a family, they have even started a business, they have set up their whole life in Malaysia. The Malaysia My Second Home program was discontinued in 2020, and existing pass holders who were stranded overseas were not allowed to come back into the country for certain periods of time since the pandemic started. This alone caused a lot of confusion. It caused a lot of distrust in the program. Because if you invested in the program, you invested, thinking that you had some sort of guarantee that even during an emergency situation, even during a pandemic that we're in right now, the pandemic can turn endemic, whatever, but still people expected that, I have this visa, I'm allowed to come in no matter what happens. But people were not allowed during certain times. And I think that really created distrust. And then the government went ahead and said, right now, if you want to stay on this visa, you need to meet the new requirements. And they had quadrupled the income requirements. The net worth requirements had gone up a lot. Everything, the pass fees, that's the smallest of, obviously, the least concerning thing, but the income requirements had gone up. Just everything has gone up exponentially to the point where a lot of people thought, I don't know if I want to meet the new requirements, even if I have the finances, even if I have the money, if I have the means, I may still not want to meet requirements. Because why? Because I was told that this is my program and the requirements will not change for me no matter what happens. People were told this story. And then the government said, if you're an applicant, if you're an existing pass holder, you need to meet the new requirements. people within Malaysia's government complained, and they were like, you know what, we can't do this to people. A man a word, and you just have to stick to what you said, because otherwise people won't trust you anymore. And then they came back and said, yeah, you know what, not a problem. Existing pass holders just need to comply to 2 of the new requirements, which are, I believe, the pass fees, they have gone up a little bit, plus also the pass now is valid for 5 years instead of 10, but they don't need to meet the new income requirements, which definitely takes a lot of weight off the shoulders, you would think. But still, there has been this changing all the time, this indecisiveness that doesn't create trust. It creates distrust, and it is a problem. What I would want to see the Malaysian government do, but it's not within my control, of course, but what I think the Malaysian government could do is, follow through the plans. If they said they're going to open up the border next month, in January 2022, open up the border, even if it's with restrictions, but just to create a bit more trust again, just to see, okay, we can keep our word, and, we can see that people trust us again. And naturally, you need to adopt. You need to be like water. You need to adopt, right? But I think people want to see this right now. And it's a very crazy story. I had a client, we've been working together in the past, and the guy lived in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, for 2 decades, and just recently moved out of Malaysia because, he wasn't happy anymore with how things were going, and he decided to move to Bangkok, Thailand. And it's something that I would never have expected, because this guy was like in love with Malaysia. He was talking about Malaysia all the time. He was very pro-Malaysia for a long time. He lived there for 2 decades. Now decided to move out of Malaysia because he was just sick and tired of all the changing, of all the shutdowns, the restrictions, and just the inconsistency that unfortunately was caused by the government. And now he lives in Bangkok, Thailand. And I know more people that were going to apply for the Malaysia My Second Home program. In fact, I'm one of them. And also the entrepreneur program and starting a company. A lot of people told me, what, I just can't go ahead right now. I don't trust the government anymore. And, to create that trust again, it's going to take consistency, and it's going to take, you under-promise, you over-deliver. You don't over-promise and under-deliver. That doesn't work. It's not just happening in Malaysia, it's happening across the globe. It's happening with so many countries, But what I would want to see, and you guys want to see, those people looking to go back to Malaysia, looking to go back to other parts of Asia, is for governments to be more consistent again. When do you think Malaysia will open its borders to international tourists, and how do you think the government has managed the pandemic? Leave a comment below and let us know. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'm uploading new videos on digital nomad locations, travel updates, and visas several times a week right now. I highly recommend that you grab a completely free copy of my ebook, How to Retain a Life of Freedom During Challenging Times. All you need to do is click on the link right below this video. Thank you for watching.